Hey guys, Ali Duzette here, and today we have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. Neptune is entering Aries, and this is a really big deal, and it all kind of goes back to 2020. We're dealing with the echoes of the events of 2020 and beyond. There is a lot going on here. I couldn't even squeeze it all into this slideshow, but I did my best to get whatever I could in. And so let's talk about it. I'm Ali Duzette. My website is aliduzetclasses.com. I also have aliduzette.com. But my classes are there. My Facebook group is Intuitive Healing with Ali Duzette. Let's jump into the quick preview. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the huge, massive, life-altering shifts that are about to take place between now and about a year from now. Huge, huge stuff. We're going to talk about what these shifts are, how we got to this place, and what we're supposed to do about it on a personal level when things are going to be going a little bit crazy nationally, internationally, on a social level. If you're new here, I'm Ali. Good to meet you. I am LDS. I consider myself a devout Christian. That is a big part of my perspective. Although this exact presentation doesn't talk about that very much, or at all. I do look at the stars from a Christian perspective, from that space that God created the universe as like this giant clock. And in the book of Genesis, when God says that he created the planets to act as times and seasons and like to be witnesses of the times. And there's this great verse in I think Psalms where he talks about how the planets give forth a speech that issues forth and impacts the people on Earth. I just think it's really true. And so I have devoted enormous amounts of my life to studying this, and I want to share with you what I find because I think it's really important and interesting. And when you know what you're looking at, you can see it really clearly, and life gets a lot less confusing. And so that's what this is about. It's about making sense of a lot of crazy stuff going on right now. Okay, I'm gonna shut down my little video if I can figure it out so that we can just focus on this. Okay, so today is March 30th, 2025, and Neptune is entering Aries today, and this is going to change absolutely everything, and you will see it for yourself, particularly after February of 2026, but the echoes are beginning now, so we need to talk about it now. Here's the brief timeline. You don't have to care about this. My ideal is to keep you informed as it's happening, but Neptune is entering Aries right this minute. Then Neptune is going to go retrograde, which is when it looks like it's going backwards from our perspective. Planets don't ever actually go backwards, but from our perspective, it looks like that because of the geometry of how all the planets are moving and how we are moving on Earth. So Neptune is going to re-enter Pisces from our perspective on October 22nd of 2025. And then it will re-enter Aries on January the 26th of 2026, 1/26/26. And then Neptune is going to stay there until 2038. So that is kind of a while. And so this energy is going to be happening for a long time. In the meantime, Saturn is also entering Aries in May of 2025, which is what, 2 months away? March, April, May? Yeah. And then Saturn is going to retrograde back into Pisces from January the 6th to February the 14th of 2026. And this is the big important thing to realize is that Saturn and Neptune will go exact at 00 degrees of Aries on February 20th, 2026. This is really important. And if all of this sounded like gibberish, hang in there because I'm going to explain it. I try to break it down so that it's very understandable. Okay, hopefully we all remember how much our lives changed in 2020. Astrologers were looking at this exact moment that I have pulled up on this screen for years prior to 2020 because this was just too crazy of a conjunction to have the Sun and Ceres and Pluto and Saturn all exact at 22 degrees, and then Mercury was also at 23 degrees. And the thing is, I was running these charts like by the minute. Mercury had just been in 22 degrees of Capricorn, like basically moments before this. So this is a really tight, crazy conjunction. And you know, yeah, astrologers have been looking at that for years ahead of time, because when you have these outer planets lining up so exactly, it always indicates pivotal events that are going to impact wide swaths of humanity. This is big deal stuff, okay? Now I did a lot of videos about this at the time and over the past couple of years, so you can go back and watch those if you want to. But this indicated to me, and you know, many others, that we were going to see an absolute transformation of society and the economy, the workplace, possible life and death scenarios affecting harvests, travel, and communication. With this Mercury right there in all of it, we wondered if communication was going to be impacted with censorship. And guess what? Does this sound familiar? Does that sound like 2020 or what? That we saw all of those things. And then we also had the North Node in Cancer. Where is that? Here we go. Bing, bing, bing. Opposite Jupiter over here, also in Capricorn, and the South Node. And so this was a huge call to come home, go home, work from home. And I feel like we saw that in a really serious way in 2020. Like, no one will argue with me about that. We all know that that is exactly what happened. And this was literally written in the stars. It was written in God's map of time. And so the first thing that we have to understand about what's going on right now is that this was a critical point that people were looking to for years in advance. And now we're heading into the second half of the story, okay? And it has to do with Neptune in Aries. But first, let's go back to after 2020. In 2022, we had America's Pluto return, and I also did many videos about this. Pluto runs on a 244-year orbit, and obviously, like, human beings don't live to be 244, so we don't have any stories of like what happens when a human has a Pluto return, which is when Pluto goes back to where it was when a planet, when something was born. But when we look at the history of Pluto returns of different nations, we see massive upheaval and death and rebirth societally. This is Pluto right here with his arms up. He's being risen from the dead, and he is the sign of rebirth. Dissolve and devolve is the theme of Pluto. And I've done a lot of videos about this. One thing that I've found in my research is that once a Pluto return takes place, typically you don't have a huge upheaval that exact day necessarily, but it's more like that's the day that some seeds are planted that are going to lead to the upheaval and the restructuring over the course of 12 years. So what we're really looking at is a period of upheaval for the United States that won't really resolve until 2034 or 2035. And this is very interesting. It's like coming into my mind to mention it, so I'll just mention it. But like from a Christian perspective, that is about when I personally would guess that Jesus would return. Like, of course, nobody knows the hour or the day, but if I had to guess, I would guess 2034. It just makes sense to me. But this is not really a video about that, but I just think the timing is interesting. We have this Pluto return that is going to take 12 years to wrap up, and that puts us in 2020 or 2034. Now, the first Pluto return took place on February the 20th of 2022. And this is interesting because this is exactly the degree of the sun that Saturn and Neptune are going exact in 2026. So these are all tied together in a serious way. February the 20th seems to be a key date. This 2 degrees of Pisces, this 22 degrees of Pisces, we're going to see that repeating. Oh, and look at that. I didn't even notice that until right now, but look at that 22 degrees of Libra right here in the moon. We've got some interesting patterns going on that we're going to see repeated in these different charts that are important and coming up. Now, this first Pluto return took place at 2:28 p.m. on 2/20/2022, and by 3:15 a.m. Eastern Time on 2/21/2022, so within 24 hours of this, the Washington Post was reporting that Russia had ordered troops to the separatist regions of Ukraine. So this was not just America's Pluto return, it was also Basically the chart of the beginning of the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, which has had massive geopolitical ramifications and which we are still dealing with today, and which is probably going to play a massive role in whatever denouement we experience in the US as part of our Pluto return. And we are going through it right this second. Now, we had 3 total Pluto returns because Pluto went retrograde. And so it kind of whacked this spot of 27 degrees and 33 minutes of Capricorn. It whacked it 3 times. And this is the 3rd Pluto return. And I talked about all of this in my previous Pluto return videos. But the 3rd Pluto return took place on December 28th of 2022. And one thing I wanted to note is that it was, when this happened, Pluto was exact the ascendant that day, which is just like the odds of that are so slim. And I had a note here to note that Jupiter was at 0 degrees of Aries. Here we have, Neptune again at 22 degrees of Pisces. Here we have to note all of this going on with Uranus and the North Node. Basically, the big message of this chart is that we are going to see a massive dissolution, an evolution. We have to expect upheaval, and it will have to do with our land, with our work, with the way that our economy functions, with the way that we obtain and use resources. Okay, all of this is going to be in upheaval. We're going to restructure. Now, Pluto returns take about 12 years to go through, as I mentioned. So we are now about 2.5 years in. We're like 20% of the way through the Pluto return situations of massive upheaval and societal redirection. So yeah, we're only 20% of the way through, and we're going to see a lot more stuff get a lot crazier in the next 10 years or so. But hang in there. I don't think we have to be gloom and doom about it, but part of that is going to be us taking responsibility for our own lives, and we're going to talk about that. So on the other end of January the 12th of 2020, that first chart we looked at, so we had January the 12th, and then we had all the events of 2020. Then we had America's Pluto return in 2022 that's going to be impacting the next 12 years until 2034. And this is the other end of this experience, I guess. If you think of these as like little bookends around this period of about 5 years, I guess 6 years, January the 12th of 2020 to February the 20th of 2026. And this is the exact minute that Saturn and Neptune are absolutely exact at 0 degrees and 44 minutes of Aries, converging on the Aries point. The Aries point is where things are reborn. It is where new beginnings happen. It happens at 0 degrees of Aries. This is a big deal. What are the odds that both of these planets would converge on this point right now? Consider that Neptune is on, I believe, a 184-year cycle, and Neptune is on a 29-year cycle. And I don't know, this is just quite a location for such a convergence. When outer planets, the planets of fate, meet at an exact point like this, big things happen. And they don't happen that day usually, or at least they don't happen that day in an obvious way. We saw some obvious stuff with Ukraine on the date of America's first Pluto return, but I think that we probably had some big decisions made behind closed doors on January the 12th of 2020 that directly led to the shutdown in March, and then all of the 2020 drama and all of that kind of stuff. I think that date probably did have some serious choices made that we just didn't see because we're not in the room where it happens. So this day may be a day where some serious stuff happens, and we may not see it until months down the road. But when you have these big slow moving planets coming together, it impacts the outcome for everyone on the whole planet, basically. So I wrote here a little note, planets of fate. These are the planets that affect the collective in a serious way. That's going to be Pluto. It's going to be Neptune. It's going to be Uranus and Saturn. And then the planets of personal choice are going to be Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, and, you know, the sun, the moon, I guess, which are technically luminaries. But whenever you have those planets of fate doing interesting stuff together, you know that it's going to impact wide swaths of people with whatever flavor is going on with those transits. So let's talk about some Saturn and Neptune conjunctions in history. So famously, Saturn-Neptune conjunctions are linked to Russian history in particular, and many astrologers have made this connection. I copied and pasted this exact thing from like AI or something as I was like Googling up all these things. I was like, this is a great list. I added some stuff of my own to it, but notice this big focus on Russia. We have 1846. The Communist Manifesto was published in the wake of the 1846 conjunctions. In 1917, the Russian Revolution occurred during a Saturn and Neptune conjunction. And then, of course, we entered World War I. In 1952 and 1953, Stalin passed. And in America, we had polio. In England, there was the Great Smog. So big health situations, big transitions of different leaders. In 1989, we had the fall of the Berlin Wall, we had the Tiananmen Square protests, and oh my gosh, I didn't write it down. There was one other like big thing that happened in 1989 that I'm not going to remember right this time. Oh, but here in 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved shortly after the 1989 conjunction. And again, what I'm betting is that decisions were made during that exact conjunction that kind of snowballed into what we saw there. So what are some themes that we're seeing here? We're seeing some new ideas entering the collective consciousness, I guess. We're seeing some revolutions. We're seeing shifts in who is running things and how they're running them. Some health situations, you know, Neptune can deal with health situations for sure. So let's talk about the critical degree, which is 0 degrees. Critical degrees are considered more important than other degrees, and 0 is not the only critical degree, but it is a critical degree. And I would say this, I don't know, 0 degrees of Aries is like a very critical degree because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So this, you know, a 0 degree thing of anything indicates that there's a new beginning, a transition, and when it's in Aries, it's extra super that way. To have Saturn and Neptune converge at exactly this point indicates some very serious new beginnings, total new beginnings. And so I ran this chart from the United States, from Washington, D.C., and it has this conjunction taking place in the first house, which is also Aries's house, the house of new beginnings. So this is really interesting, and we're going to see a lot of new beginnings, I really think, and we're going to talk about it. But first, we need to understand what is ending and what is going to begin. And to get to the heart of that, we have to understand the nature of Neptune and the nature of Saturn. So this is Neptune. Not really, this is like a graphic from Canva. Neptune deals with what we don't know that we don't know. It's like the blind spot. It's the hidden things, the stuff that we don't even know that we can't see. It deals with the unconscious mind, the collective unconscious, the things that nobody knows. It deals with our spirituality, our connection with unseen beings like God, angels, demons, and so on. It deals with loss. Where Neptune is in our charts, a lot of times we lose things, literally. It can deal with victimhood, and a little reminder that victimhood is usually not a conscious choice, although sometimes it is. But usually victimhood is a symptom of past experiences that have helped us form dysfunctional forms of thinking. And so our victimhood is like a dysfunctional thought pattern. And so Neptune is in charge of that dysfunction. It deals with delusionality. It deals with no boundaries. It like hates boundaries. Not really. It doesn't hate them necessarily, but it just dissolves them. Wherever Neptune is, things get a little bit fuzzy and it's not always clear what's going on. Things can be a little mysterious. Things can be unclear. Where Neptune is, there's not a clear boundary between you and the thing, whatever that is. Neptune can deal with taking advantage of others and being taken advantage of. And to me, it's kind of from a space of innocence. It's not like manipulatively taking advantage of others or being taken advantage of, but it's more like there's no boundaries here. You know, the boundaries are not clear. And so if I'm not really sure whose this is, I guess it's fine if I take it. Does that make sense? This kind of, it's not necessarily like malicious. Like Neptune doesn't really have like a mean streak, in my opinion. It's more like innocence. It governs confusion. It governs the hidden things. And when boundaries are hidden and confused, people can walk on each other's boundaries and not really realize it. And they can have other people walk on their boundaries and not really realize it and not feel empowered to stop it. Maybe they don't even understand how their boundaries are being violated. And so this is kind of the energy of Neptune. Working with Neptune requires extreme self-awareness to do correctly. I think Neptune can be like a real powerhouse. And, you know, I have a lot going on with my own Neptune in my own natal chart. And I feel like I've seen a lot of loss in my life. And also, there can be a lot of power that comes from being willing to let things go. A lot of power that comes from like tuning in really hard to yourself and tuning in with God and being willing to first off accept what you don't know and be okay with taking steps into the dark, not knowing how it's going to turn out. That's Neptune vibes. And there's also a lot of power in being brave enough to ask God to like peel back the curtain so you can see a little bit more clearly, which can also be Neptune, Neptune energy. But either way, to work with Neptune, you have to get real with yourself and not be afraid of the things that you can't see. You have to be willing to face what you don't know, even if it's ugly. Now, Neptune entered Pisces in 2011, but Uranus entered Pisces in 2003. So we have had outer planets transiting Pisces for like 25 years now almost. Well, I guess like 22 years. And so it's important to know that Neptune is the boss of Pisces. Everything that I just said about Neptune also is true of Pisces. And Neptune in Pisces is like a double whammy of all of this energy, okay? So to have Uranus in this energy of we don't know what we don't know, delusionality, no boundaries, victimhood, loss, all of that, Uranus has been in that zone, and then Neptune like entered that zone and like blew it up. I mean, like we have been in solid Neptune and Pisces zone for what is that, 14 years or something, and we have seen that. We have seen big focuses on victimhood, lots of talk about reparations in since 2003. You know, we were in the Obama era where a lot of people thought like this is the end of racism. Like we are going to prove that we are not a racist nation. We're going to elect this person of color to be the president, and that will solve the problem. But did it solve the problem? No. Then things got even more racially focused. We saw the creation of and then the real push for DEI. Separately from that, we saw boundaries between nations getting dissolved. The EU was founded, what, in 2001, 2002 era, right before this. And as the EU, you know, did its thing, we saw the boundaries between those nations dissolving and a lot of ease of travel because there was less boundaries. You know, in America, you know, our boundaries, you know, people were able to like cross our boundaries pretty easy. Now Neptune also and Pisces governs things like astrology, spirituality, new age type of stuff. Technically, I actually think astrology is governed by the ninth house because the ninth house is about religion and rules, and you can't really be into astrology unless you're like pretty into like math and geometry and like angles, and it's very rules based. But I'll say it makes sense that with Neptune and Pisces, people have become more open to astrology, because even though it is very rules based and very logical, it doesn't have that reputation. And a lot of people get into it thinking it's kind of like, oh, it's so spiritual, when really it's it's like a hard science, like not really, but kind of. But we've seen a lot of that stuff becoming more and more accepted over time. We've seen a lot of decisions made on a public policy level across the whole world based on what I consider the delusion that gravy trains can last forever, where we're facing realities of demographic shift that cannot possibly support ongoing, gravy trains of these various kinds. But we've made a lot of decisions that indicate that nobody cares about the reality there. Um, we've seen massive increases in chronic illness. We've seen a lot of self-aware people changing their dysfunctional thinking and healing, and we've seen non-self-aware people sinking even more deeply into their dysfunctional thinking and becoming even more victim-y. And so these are kind of some of the energies that we've seen starting in 2003, and then it's been like snowballing, 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 and here we are. And today Neptune is entering Aries. And now we're going to talk about Saturn for a little minute, and I'm going to bring it all together. So Saturn is the boss of the law of the harvest. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. If you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree and not celery. Saturn governs practice, discipline, boundaries, work, leadership, taking responsibility. So this is a really interesting placement in Pisces, because it's not a natural fit. Like, that's not normal, like that's not where Saturn feels most at home. Let's put it that way. And so Saturn has been in Pisces since March 2023, I believe March 7th of 2023. And it's going to exit on, I think, May 24th of 2025. And then Saturn and Neptune will be together in Aries. And again, we're going to talk about what that means in just a minute. But Saturn in Pisces is really interesting because Pisces dissolves boundaries, but Saturn imposes boundaries. Saturn loves boundaries, and Pisces just like dissolves them. Pisces dissolves order, but Saturn imposes order. Pisces deals with loss and letting go, and kind of having that transcendent, like, I'll let go of this and trust that the universe will bring it back to me, or like take care of it. Saturn deals with taking responsibility for what's going on and imposing our own will upon what's going on. So where Pisces is more prone to like accept what's going on, Saturn is like, I'm going to change my choices now, and we're gonna stop this. We're gonna change this. And so this is an interesting placement, and how it shows up for different people is gonna depend on what's going on in your natal chart. What is the attitude that you approach your own life with? So with Saturn in Pisces, we see the law of the harvest in play with our spirituality. We see consequences coming home for the choices we've made and the thoughts we have thought over the past 29 years, which is a complete Saturn cycle. Saturn in Pisces can lend structure to spiritual practices that can help us like be consistent, like help you actually show up and do your yoga every day. Or it could be kind of like the opposite, like your Saturn has entered Pisces and Pisces is dissolving the structure there. But there's going to be a theme of the structure of spirituality, and how it shows up for individuals is going to be individual. Yeah, Saturn and Pisces can help us be consistent, or it can show us the consequences of not having sufficient structure. Saturn in Pisces can drive practicality. I don't even know what I meant there. It can drive practicality in terms of delusionality or spirituality, which is to say that you might have your spiritual, conclusions completely wrong, but you will probably also be very disciplined at it, if that makes sense. With Saturn in Pisces, we may also see a crisis of faith. And I feel like I've seen a bazillion crises of faith since this transit began. And I think that makes a lot of sense, where Saturn enters Pisces and Pisces is dissolving the boundaries. It's dissolving that reliance on external authority and telling you like, you are also an authority, like your own feelings also matter. And then with that Saturn in Pisces, people are going to have to say, oh, well, okay, then I have to reevaluate the role of authority in my spiritual beliefs. And I just think that we've seen that really, really clearly with this transit. So Saturn and Neptune have been together in Pisces since 2023, and they will be there. I mean, I said May 2025, but technically Neptune's out of there for now. But as we've seen this happening, we've seen dissolving boundaries, we've seen crises of faith and evolutions of faith. Now, this transit has overseen a strong development in AI. AI technically came out in 2022, I think in November or October, but it's been growing through the oversight of Saturn and Neptune, where we have Neptune, which is going to govern like consciousness slash unconsciousness, and then the discipline of people like working hard to make AI happen. I don't know. It reminded me of Saturn. I thought this seems like a thing to me. And excuse me, things can be hard to see with a lot of stuff in Pisces because Pisces obscures things and makes truth easily hidden. And I think that we've seen how a lot of truth has been hidden, and a lot of people have really questioned what they thought was true, things that they've thought was true for a long time, and then they have to question it. Now, Neptune and Pisces are also very watery, and there is this idea that everyone has their own truth, that everyone's perspective is equally valid. One thought question for you personally is, what spirituality shifts have you seen since 2023, and what faith transitions and consequences of past actions and past ways of thinking have you seen, showing up for you? And I feel like I've seen big faith transitions and consequences of our personal choices, but also choices of things like church leaders from the past and this kind of thing. It's really come into the front and center stage in this time frame on a personal level, and then like on more of a collective level. I feel like I've seen groups of people, large groups of people, talking about faith transitions and errors of religious leaders from the past, and how it's time to like see things differently. And so this has been an interesting thing, but what we have to understand is that everything is going to change when both of these are in Aries. So we have to understand Aries. These are some things that have to do with Aries. Shoot first, aim later. Leap before you look. We can just do things. Aries is a fire sign, and it's open to burning things down. You don't like it, burn it down. Aries is not interested in beating around the bush. It wants to get to the point. And Pisces is very happy to beat around the bush. Pisces would like to go swimming in the bush and just kind of like hang out in the bush and like never get to the point. And Pisces can be a little bit allergic to the point, and Aries has no time for that. Aries says, get to the point. So we are about to go from the loosey-goosey, swimming around in the bush instead of beating around the bush. And we're going to have to get to the point. And that's going to be quite a whiplash moment. Aries can be violent, either emotionally or literally. Aries is obvious. It doesn't hide stuff. These water signs, water can be murky, and wherever you have a water sign, you can expect depth and you can expect way more than what meets the eye. But when it comes to Aries, there is really not that. Aries, what you see is what you get. And so things that have been under the surface for a while are going to come to the surface now and maybe catch on fire. And it's going to be a little bit shocking to the system. Aries is also the sign of the warrior, willing to fight, and Aries is the sign of the beginner, the initiate, somebody who's gonna start the ball rolling. It's Adam, like biblically speaking, it's Adam taking his first breath and looking around the garden and being like, okay, guess it's me. Guess I'm gonna get things started, and taking that initiative and like naming the animals and like choosing the names and like choosing what's what, and starting all of humanity off. That is the energy of Aries. Is just like, okay, I guess we're going to take action. We can just do things. We can just name every animal that God made in the Garden of Eden. We are having a transition now from water to fire. We are going away from this idea that everyone has their own truth to what is true is obvious. We're going away from glorifying and coddling quote unquote victims to a new reality where everyone will have to reckon with how much they personally are responsible for their own fate. And somebody commented on my last video asking, like, can we like reframe it as empowering victims? Yeah, we could. This transit is going to empower people who feel like they are victimized, but it probably won't feel like it. It will probably feel horrible. In terms of like, if you think of being empowered as like this great like breath of fresh air, and you're like, I don't know, the princess who picks up her own sword to fight the bad guys. It can sound more exciting than it will probably feel, if that makes sense. Martyrs are going to have to put on their big girl panties because nobody's going to be carrying them. People are done with that. And they're going to start feeling done with that about today. And it's going to get seriously real by February of 2026. People are going to be extremely done with people who are in martyr mode and in victim mode. We're going to see how people become more willing to fight for what they believe is true. Remember that Neptune and Saturn are going away from the sign associated with compassion and empathy, that would be Pisces, and they're going into the sign associated with a fiery temper and, frankly, selfishness, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but Aries is preoccupied with the self. And Pisces is not. Pisces is preoccupied with the collective, what's best for everybody. And Aries says, well, I'm sorry if that's better for everybody, but I need to take care of myself. And that's allowed. And we need that, right? We all need to put on our own oxygen mask first and all of that kind of thing. Like, we need both of these things, but we have to understand that we're moving away from compassion and empathy zone and into selfish zone, into less compassion and understanding, more assertion, being willing to fight for things that we were previously okay with kind of like hanging out with. It's like the line is being crossed right now, and it's going to be crossed a little bit now. It's going to be crossed more so in May. And then we'll probably have a busy summer with a lot of shifts like this. And then Saturn and Neptune are going to go back into Pisces for the very tail end of the year. And then we're going to hit this energy hard in February. But okay, Pisces is in charge of globalism, welfare, and open borders. Aries is in charge of nationalism, self-determination, and strong boundaries. And I did get that from one of my favorite astrologers to follow, who is Pathfinder Astrology on X. I think he goes by Pathfinder Astro or something like that. And he wrote that, and I was like, that's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it. We've been in an era of globalism, erasing boundaries, opening borders, supporting everybody. But Aries is like the opposite of that. Aries is, you need to be proud of the nation that you come from, and you get to choose your own fate, and you should not have to be forced to take care of other people who are not taking care of themselves. And you need to have strong boundaries, because if you don't, people will walk on you, and Aries is not okay with that. So this is like, yeah, it's massive whiplash zone, and we are starting it today. Now, I want to mention that there are multiple perspectives, and we're going to see this, and you will see it in your own life. So when it comes to things like what is true is obvious, some people are going to say, well, obviously biology says there's only two genders, duh, it's so obvious. And they will say that is the truth, that is obvious. And then you're going to have other people that will say, well, but some people are born with, unusual chromosomes, or they're born with, both sets of genitalia. And yeah, it might happen extremely, extremely rarely, but the exception is everything. And obviously, then there's not just two genders, there's all this whole spectrum out there, and you're ignoring it. And the truth is obvious that it's not as simple as two genders. Okay. I hope you can see what I'm saying. Both groups are going to think that their own truth is obvious, and they are going to get more and more agitated about it and less tolerant of others. So, and this is going to be true on basically everything, like everything that you can think of, every kind of issue where people are like, well, obviously. Other people are saying, well, obviously, about the opposite. Okay, there are always two perspectives, and we all have our own opinions about which one is right and which one is wrong, but that's exactly the point, that we all have these different perspectives. Okay. everybody is going to be absolutely sick of whiny fake victims, okay? And before I even read the rest of that, I want to mention that when I say fake victims, I'm talking about like from the perspective of the person like asserting this, if that makes sense. So if we think of it in terms of I mean, I don't know. There's lots of ways that we could analogize it, I guess. But for example, like right now, there's a lot of talk about like food stamps and should we ban soda sales for recipients of food stamps? And so there's people that are might feel like the food stamp recipients are the victims. But then at the same time, there are people that feel like the people forced to pay for other people's soda pop and then for their healthcare after they drink all that soda pop are the victims. So like who is the real victim? Who's the real victim? The person who can no longer spend their welfare money on soda pop, or is the real victim the person who's being forced at gunpoint to pay for that person's soda and then for their health care when the soda catches up to them? Like, who is the real victim here? And whoever feels like the real victim is going to feel like the opposite party is a fake victim. Does this make sense? So like, we're going to see this split where people are like, well, I'm the real victim. And that person thinks they're a victim, but they're just a fake victim. You know, if they just like got it together the way I think they should get it together, right? If they just worked harder, or if they were just more compassionate, then then all the problems would be solved. And so these are like the two kind of mindsets that are going to go in, but everyone is going to be sick of who they perceive as whiny fake victims. We're going to see a stratification, probably in one level on class lines. I think we're probably going to see it on class lines. I think we're probably going to see it on ethnic lines, probably on national lines, where people are going to say, well, I'm the real victim here, and you think you're the victim, but really this is your problem that you should take responsibility for and finally just like be a grown up about it. So this is like the vibe that we're going into. And people are going to, first off, they're going to look at their own lives and be like, well, this is where I've been a victim and it wasn't fair and I'm done with that. I'm done with that. And now I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm going to fight these whiny fake victims. Like they've been taking advantage of me or they have not been giving me what I really deserve. And so I'm done with that. So people are going to stop tolerating the behaviors of people that they think could stand to do better. And they may just stop tolerating the people themselves, which is going to be, we'll see how it goes. But I think we're going to see a lot of people starting to assert themselves in the face of their own perceived victimhood. And there's going to be a real serious set of conversations about who is the real victim, who should really be doing more for themselves or doing more for others. And this is going to be a really big thing. So what are we already seeing? Liberation Day tariffs, in quotes. This is what President Trump announced the other day. They're scheduled for April the 2nd of 2025, which I would say, as I was like writing this, I was like, oh man, this is totally like exactly what I was talking about. We're punishing what are perceived as fake victims. Like, oh, you think that you're a victim because we're not going to subsidize trade with you anymore, like done with that. And so like slapping the tariffs on and like retaliatory tariffs. This is totally Aries energy that we're heading into. Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, no matter how you feel about it, hopefully you can see the energy here is that warrior that's like, I'm going to slice and dice what I think are delusional budgets. And this is going to add to that victimhood energy of who is the real victim here. Who is the real victim? Is the real victim, Doge? Is the real victim Elon Musk, who's getting all the Teslas in America, like, vandalized or whatever? Is the real victim the people whose jobs he's cutting in the government. And so like people are going to like really take sides on that. And but I hope you can see that the point is that the energy is here. People have these different perspectives on how it's playing out, but the energy is there. It's all on the same axis of perspective. We're already seeing new implementations of boundaries and borders, border wall, deportations, this casual cruelty or calculated deterrent. One of my Facebook people posted this picture. This is a Studio Ghibli AI of Trump arresting this woman who was an illegal alien who was arrested for fentanyl. She's like killed a bunch of Americans. She cried when she was arrested. I mean, she probably didn't kill those people directly. She just sold them the drugs that killed them, that kind of thing. But so the White House Twitter account posted this picture and caused quite a stir. But I hope you can see how this is Neptune and Aries vibes. This is Neptune and Aries. Neptune and Aries is, let's take AI and make a version of this arrest into a meme with like children's animation. Like, do you see what I'm saying? It's like that Neptune vibe, but that Aries vibe that is going to be a little bit heartless. It's just like, this is it. You cross our border, like you're going home. And so anyway, my friend posted, this is the casual cruelty, posting these mean memes. And then, but I've also been reading, like, is it casual cruelty or a calculated deterrent? You know, is it possible that people who might be thinking about doing bad stuff are going to see this kind of meme and kind of rethink their actions, right? And so both perspectives, like people carry both perspectives, right? But both of these perspectives definitely go on the Neptune and Aries vibe. I think we're going to see increasing religious devotion. Neptune deals with spirituality. Aries deals with our core sense of self. And to have Neptune there, I think a lot of people are going to be turning more to religion for, a foundational sense of self, where Pisces doesn't really need religion as much as spirituality. Aries is just really grounded in, it's grounded in a way that Pisces is not. And regardless of how you feel about religion, hopefully you can see that it is more grounded than like quote unquote spirituality, in terms of it has like rules, it has, rights, it has stuff that you have to do with your body in person. Like many times you have to like go to a place of worship and you might have to eat something specific or avoid eating something specific. And like these are Aries kinds of actions. And to have Neptune, the planet of spirituality, moving away from the sign of spirituality and into the sign of taking personal action, I just think that we're going to see a rise in religious devotion. And I think we're already seeing that, but I think we're going to see it like really big really soon. I think we're going to see an increasing focus on the gender binary, where men are going to have to be men and men are going to realize that they are men, and women are going to see that and say, oh, I guess I am a woman. And I think we're going to see a big return to what you might consider more like primordial gender roles. That was a weird word, but that's the one that came into my head. But like the original gender roles, I think we're going to see more of that over particularly the next 3 years. And we're already starting to see that a little bit, a greater focus on masculine versus feminine. Podcasts, like I wrote a book about this, like lots of people are talking about it. We're seeing that there has to be greater action taken in terms of gender binary, and people have different opinions on that, and that's part of the whole story here, is that we're going to have this big focus on it. People are going to see it with their different perspectives, but like the focus will be on that thing. And we're already starting to see the you can just do things energy, but it's going to go crazy. We're going to really be seeing we can just do things. Now, these are some memes that came up in my feed over the past week that as I saw them, I was like, okay, this is absolutely Neptune entering Aries. Like it is showing up in the memes. Here we go. Over here, girls after being radicalized online, like, and boys after being radicalized online talk about this return to gender norms, a return to religion. I think we're going to see that, a return to, you know, this guy's marching off to war, and like he's probably taking care of his body. Aries deals with fitness. You know, she is a fairly fit, you know, anime woman. There you go. This one I started seeing everywhere a few days ago, and I thought, what greater embodiment of the vibe? We are no longer accepting things we cannot change. It is now time to change the things we cannot accept. If you take one thing out of this whole presentation, this should be the thing that you take away from this, because this is the vibe from now until 2028. We are no longer accepting things we cannot change. It is now time to change the things we cannot accept. And we are going to see this from every side of the political spectrum. We are going to see this attitude from people of every kind of persuasion. We are going to see that from every corner, and you are probably going to feel it in your own life. You are probably going to get to a point in one or more areas of your life where you say, and I'm done. Like, I have sacrificed a lot. I have put up with a lot. I let you step on my boundaries. Maybe I stepped on your boundaries, and now we're done. And now we're done. I'm done accepting this, and it's time to change it, and I'm going to change it. Here's this meme. Your entire life will change when you realize that stress and anxiety feed on idleness. When you take action, you starve them of oxygen they need to survive. The answer is found in the action. This energy is exactly what we're moving into. Neptune and Pisces. Pisces vibes can be anxious. They can be a little bit idle. Pisces is not famous for taking action. And when you don't take action, you get stressed and anxious. Like there is a little bit of a link, you know? But real quick, all of humanity is going to realize that the answer is found in the action. We have to take action. If we can no longer afford to be idle. And I think we're going to see this in a lot of ways. Okay. Here are some things to expect as Saturn and Neptune hang out together in Aries for years up through 2028. During this time, these are my predictions. I think men are going to have to be men and women are going to have to be women. We're going to see a big return to the gender binary. And at the same time, we're going to see one population that's like, men have to be men, women have to be women. And we're going to see other people really reacting to that and being like very, very upset about that. And of course, we're going to see a lot of probably dissension about what it means for men to be masculine. What does it mean for women to be feminine? A lot of discussion and debate about that, but we will have to reckon with the realities involved. We're going to have to be real about biology. And that's probably what I should have just written here is we're going to have to be real about biology. We're going to have to be real about biology in a lot of different ways, but that's one of the core ways. I think we're going to see nations all over the world getting real about budgets, and we've already started to see that as the United States has been, pulling back financial support for European defense. Well, Europe can't have a robust welfare state without unless America pays for their defense, you know? So if America is going to withdraw a bunch of that money, then Europe has to rethink how they're spending their own money. And in the meantime, everybody's going to have to reevaluate their budgets, and we're going to get really real about it. And yeah, I use the term like slicing and dicing. I think we're going to see some slicing and dicing. That's what Aries is all about. Getting in there, being the warrior, taking that sword and just chopping things up. Slice it first, think about it later. And I think we're going to start seeing that really in terms of budgets on a national level, possibly on a personal level as well. I think we're going to see some serious holy war. I don't know if you've been following what's going on in Europe right now, but there have been massive amounts of immigration from the Middle East. And the thing is that a lot of times the cultures that are being imported into these lands are not compatible with the original inhabitants. And I personally am seeing a lot of echoes of it's like a jihad crusader type of vibe that's going on. And with this big focus on boundaries and, Aries doesn't want to be stepped on anymore. I'm thinking that we're going to see some kind of thing. Like I'm basically thinking, I think we're going to see some kind of like resurgence of quote unquote crusades, whatever that might look like, but when it shows up, you will be like, oh, that's what Allie was talking about. You'll remember. You'll be like, oh, I see it. It probably won't look exactly the same, obviously, as like from 1076 or whatever. But I think that we're going to see some echoes of, as people become more and more religious and more willing to fight for what they believe in, we're going to see that. The focus on boundaries. This is going to be national, citywide, statewide, and personal. Big focuses on immigration and who is allowed to go where. People, I think, are going to be much more interested in claiming the land of their natality. Aries governs natality and like, where are you actually from? And I think a lot of people are going to be becoming a lot more ethnically aware, becoming a lot more interested in inhabiting the land of their ancestors and the land where they came from. And I think they're going to become a lot less tolerant of people encroaching on land that they view as theirs. I hope this makes sense. I think we're going to see a lot of more pick yourself up by your bootstraps vibes. A lot less compassion for people that struggle to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. I think we're going to see this is going to snap and people are going to say, well, too bad for you, because I already have put in a lot of time and energy to helping you, to picking you up by your bootstraps, and now you have to pick yourself up, and I'm done with that. I think it's going to be a little bit of a rude awakening for probably a lot of people in a bunch of different ways. I think people are going to become way more okay with other people's suffering. And I think we're going to see a lot of big feelings of, well, they deserve it. And we're going to see that in a lot of different directions. Like a lot of different people are going to feel that way about a lot of other different people. I hope that makes sense. Open carry. Aries governs like weapons and stuff. I think we may see a lot more of a focus on being armed and weapons and preparing for military stuff and being involved in military stuff. I wrote down here back to birth, but what I meant by that is that I think there's going to be a big focus on the founding, the foundation of anything, and that's going to be true for like every nation and every group of people. I think they're going to feel a drive to get back to their roots. But remember that the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States is coming up on July 4th of 2026. And so like President Trump is planning like huge celebrations for this. It's going to be big. And I read that they were, oh my gosh, I can't remember the details, but I think they're like setting up funds where like right now you can get, or in the past you could get a grant as an artist to make like any kind of art that you wanted. But like right now the art that the government wants to pay for is going to be like patriotic art and art that celebrates the founding of the nation. And this is totally this is the vibe. This is exactly what we're talking about. I think we're going to see an uptick in the death penalty. And I wrote down here a deflationary spiral because I read some guy's theory the other day. I'll never find it again, but he wondered if the current administration is trying to basically create a deflationary spiral. Like if they can crash the housing market and drive prices down of housing and like have a stock market crash that would drive prices down for everybody, like it would obviously cause like many problems. Look, I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, but I am saying that it is possible that this may happen, that we will see a deflationary spiral with the intention of restoring value to the dollar. That is my understanding of what we might be looking at. So we're going to start seeing these shifts now, and we're already seeing them, but we are going to see them way more starting like now. We're going to see it way more in May of 2025, at the end of May. We're going to see it through the summer. And then remember, both Neptune and Saturn are going to go retrograde for a few months, and then they're going to go back into Pisces. So we're going to have a little bit of maybe a rest in that loosey-goosey spirituality, no boundaries, compassion zone of Pisces just for a few, basically weeks, like a few short months at the end of 2025. And then in February of 2026, bam, these two planets are going to go exact at 0 degrees, marking a massive rebirth, a massive transition, a massive new way of existing. And it's going to be very different than what life was like under, 23 years of outer planets in Pisces. So on a personal level, what do we need to be ready for? Um, we need to be ready for some cognitive dissonance and big shakeups in our perceptions of how the world works. Okay, I think we're going to see some huge transitions in what people and nations are okay with, and we need to be, open and ready to realizing where our cognitive dissonance is and what, you know, we can ask God, like, okay, we're gonna head into whiplash zone. Like, what do I need to rethink so that when I enter whiplash zone, I'm not like totally thrown for a loop? What are the ideas that I need to be aware of now so that when this stuff happens, I'm not taken off guard? Um, to the extent that any of us are currently in quote unquote victim mode, if we are not able to provide for our own needs, or like if we have like big problems that we rely on other people to solve, now is a great time to be asking God for help, to have a new perspective and new wisdom on how to become more self-reliant, how to more thoroughly embody this energy that we're heading into. Like, how can I pull myself up by my own bootstraps? And of course, part of the Christian message is that you can't. Like, you can to some extent. You can look at a situation, take responsibility for it, and change it. But that's not always true. Like, my older brother was severely and multiply disabled. He was nonverbal. He could not walk. He had a wheelchair. He had a G tube. I changed his diaper. And what what are you going to tell him? Well, James, why don't you pray about how to be self-reliant? Like, he ain't never going to be self-reliant. Okay, that's not how it is. And there are plenty of people who cannot be self-reliant, and they never ever will be. And you know that is a reality. And for those of us that are dealing with that reality personally, or with people in our families, now is a great time to be asking God for help, for a new vision on how to manage these difficult situations. Not all of us are in a space where we can pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, but what we can do is cultivate our relationship with God and with others in our lives who are willing to take responsibility for us, and to accept us as part of their stewardship. And there are things that we can do. There are people that God has prepared to be in the right place at the right time for us, to help us be where we need to be at the right time. And so I don't, and again, this is like the Christian message. Nobody can really pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. Like, we all need Jesus. We all need God. And so wherever we are in our lives and whatever our life situations are like, that is the really important thing. Not all of us are going to be able to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, but we all can cultivate a relationship with our Creator and ask our Creator for specific assistance, and learn faith and trust that as we listen to what God is telling us to do, that we can be led and guided and protected and provided for. Okay. I also wrote, it's time to get in shape. Aries governs like physical fitness. So we're going to have a lot of support soon to get real about our own health. We're going to have support for transforming our own health, and that's going to be great. I'm frankly excited about that. I could use a little bit more support myself. Okay, we need to ask God for help and clarity. Asking God for help and clarity specific to you and your own situation is going to help this transit go as easily as possible for you. Right now is a fabulous time to let go of dysfunctional thinking and like ask God, where is my thinking dysfunctional? Like, where am I thinking stupid thoughts that are holding me back? Just ask God. He can just tell you that. Now is a great time to embrace self-determination, taking responsibility for your own life, realizing how you have created the situation that you are in, however you have done that. Now is a great time to realize that, okay, Saturn governs the law of the harvest. If we are planting new seeds now for a really good harvest, like, that's a great idea. What do you want to harvest 3 years from now? What do you want in your life in 2028? What are the seeds you have to plant today to get those things? If you want a fit body by 2028, You need to plant the seed of daily exercise, and you can start that today. Um, if you want to plant a new seed of financial stability, then you ask yourself, okay, what are financially stable people doing right now that I am not doing? How am I going to do that? And we start taking these steps to plant these seeds so that we have a really good harvest in a few years. Right now is a great time to get real with ourselves about the nature of reality, and really asking ourselves, what is real? What is really real and really true in this world? How am I going to work with it? And the more we are open to seeing things as they really are, the easier things are going to be for us. Because the thing is, I keep hammering it home. People have different perspectives. They're going to come to different conclusions about what is real. But in my opinion, there is a real reality that is real, and it transcends any of our perspectives. And it is bigger than all of us. It is bigger than what anyone believes or what their opinion is. If you can align yourself to that true reality, that's when you are going to be the safest, the most secure, the most blessed. It's hard to have a lot of blessings when you're off in cloud cuckoo land and you are not grounded in reality. God blesses us when we are real, when we engage with reality. We need to get real with ourselves about our own victimhood stories. So, like, where in your life are you feeling like a victim? It's time to really think about that. We need to shift out of our own victimhood because um, we're going to be kicked out of our victimhood, whether we like it or not, in the next 3 years. If you can consciously choose to shift out of it yourself on purpose, it's going to be a lot more pleasant for you than if your butt is kicked out of that mode because there is no other option. These were some prompts for prayer journaling. What you do is you write down the prompt on a piece of paper, you skip a line, and then write whatever comes into your mind until you're done. And then you pray about it and say, okay, God, did I get the answers correctly here? And then, then you reread it and see what you got. Number one, God, what message do you have for me about my current mindset? What am I thinking about incorrectly? Two, how can I see myself more accurately? Ooh, I'll add an addendum to that. How can I see how the world works more accurately? How can I see reality more accurately? Three, what is the blind spot in my life that I don't want to see accurately? Four, how is my current experience a result of my past decisions? Five, what questions should I ask right now to start shifting my life in the right direction? Okay, and when we ask God what questions to ask, that's a really great question because then you get the questions that you need to ask, then you ask those questions and get really great answers. So bing, 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 do that, okay? You will get some really great answers. It is worth it to sit down and write this stuff down and get a written message tailor-made for you from your creator. Please do it. Oh, the more we choose to change proactively, the less we have to rely on external forces to show up and kick our butts for us. Okay. If part of our life experience here is to learn life lessons and, um, whatever we're here for to accomplish on earth, if we are trying to do that proactively, we have a lot more power, we have a lot more agency, we have a lot more support to get the job done, and it's a lot easier for us than if we wait for the forces of fate to come kick our butts. Okay, that's just how it is. So if we take responsibility for changing to accommodate this transit the most effectively, it's going to go better for us. Our change can involve new choices of behavior, new ways of thinking. We might have to add something more to our lives, but we might need to subtract something from our lives. Maybe we need to stop watching a show. Maybe we need to stop scrolling on whatever. Maybe we need to stop staying up late or whatever. We may need to add some new things in, but we might need to get rid of some old habits that are holding us back. So what do we need to add? What do we need to subtract? These are things to be thinking about. We have lots of support going into this time period for personal responsibility and for taking action. We really can just do things, and that is going to be the message of the next 3 years. You can just do things. You can just decide that you're going to do it and then just do it. So these are a few sessions that I thought of suggesting from allygizetteClasses.com. So these are kind of like this, really. They're like Most of them are like slideshows, and you don't even have to watch them. You just listen to me walk you through some like mental exercises where you have to imagine different things, think about different stuff, and it kind of rewires your subconscious mind so that you can let go of the stuff that is holding you back. And I designed these things to be things that you can multitask with. So you can like listen to it while you fold the laundry or do the dishes or go on a run or lift your weights or do your yoga. You can multitask with it, which is really nice. Discerning your divine mission is going to help us feel more clarity about what we're supposed to be doing during this time. Healing your boundaries is free, so no excuses. Everyone should be doing boundaries work right now, especially when it's free, because boundaries issues are going to be like a really big thing for the next 3 years. And the more you can do to have strong boundaries and an appropriate view of boundaries going into it, the easier your life is going to be. Hostility, fear, and despair. The more we can clear all of that stuff out as we head into it, the easier our lives are going to be. Supporting executive function came to mind because this is about taking action. Aries is all about taking action. So if you struggle with taking action, like you know what you need to do, and then you struggle implementing it, this is the session for you. And coping with big changes, we are heading into whiplash zone where we're going to see some huge changes. Huge vibe shifts are approaching, and uh, I don't know if you haven't done this session or if you haven't done it with this in mind, I'm gonna recommend it because we're gonna see some big changes. So so ah, we need to prepare for some big shifts. Remember that we're gonna see this personally and politically. The more that we do to get ourselves right with God in reality, the easier of a time we are going to have, and it's going to be a lot better for us. And then finally, be sure to go and check out my Facebook group, Intuitive Healing with Aries TODAY. Thank you for being here. I hope this was helpful to you. If it was helpful, I guess let me know. Come hang out on Facebook. Uh, we have a lot to keep an eye on, but the most important thing is that we are taking advantage, not taking advantage, that we're taking responsibility for our own lives. You know, we are all qualified to partner with God to create our own lives. And that's already what happens, but a lot of times we're kind of like, you know, wandering through our lives, not realizing how much power we actually have. And this transit is really going to drive it home. You have the power. You have the power, whether you have been taking advantage of that or not. You do have that power. And now is the time to wake up and say, oh, I am the chosen one. I am the chosen one of my own life. Like, you know, the chosen one trope, like Harry Potter's the chosen one or whatever. That's the message of Aries. Every person is the chosen one of their own life. You are the chosen one of your own life. You are the main character of your own life. And we are all invited to realize that and take action on that now. Okay. And it starts today. It's going to really ramp up over the next 3 years. It's kind of exciting. It's going to be probably crazy. But if we go into it with a positive attitude and a willingness to connect with God and to work with God, as long as we're listening to God every single day, nothing can really go wrong for us. God will always come through for us. I feel like I know that God is there for us every day. And if we connect with God and ask what we need to do and listen and do it, we receive that divine protection. We receive that divine provision. We have nothing to be afraid of. We just have to take responsibility for connecting with our creator. So, okay, there you have it. Wow. Thanks for listening. Hang out on Facebook, Intuitive Healing with Aries TODAY. Wow. We'll check in again soon. There's a lot going on. Bye, guys.